Hey everyone, Christina Tali, and today we have a special guest, Sophie Kandler, employee of Games Workshop, TSR, and Chessex. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of That Trans Geek Girl. I'm your host as always, Christina Tali, and with me I have a very special guest. Her name is Sophie Kandler. Reason I have her on the show is she has quite a extensive history with tabletop gaming. She worked for TSR, she worked for Chessex, she worked for Games Workshop, and she's also a very accomplished model builder. So say hello, Sophie.
Hello, Sophie.
So, we're going to get into this one. We're going to get
Hello
going.
to all my fans.
This actually may be one of the more watched episodes. I might have more than 3 people watching this one.
Oh, should I go topless? I can do that.
Only if I can.
Okay, deal.
Anyway, so like I said, the reason I have her on the show, other than the fact she has a great comic sense of humor, is that she's a veteran in the world of tabletop gaming. Would that be correct in assessing that?
Yeah, I started playing tabletop games per se, like when I was a real little kid with all the usual stuff. And then when like games like Tank Battle came out, which, in the 70s, eventually moved on to Squad Leader. Ooh. And then from there in 1978 to Dungeons and Dragons. Never looked back. See, I'm an old grog nerd.
And nothing wrong with that at all. As you know, I'm a tabletop gamer, even though it's some of the newer stuff. We've actually talked about this when we were setting this interview up, but this is about you, not about me. So everyone knows my stuff.
About...
They see me play Pathfinder online on Gaming XP. So
Pathfinder is run by a friend of mine named Lisa Stevens.
So there's something new that you might not have known. But yeah, we play it online. We were playing it online. It may be coming back. We're still in negotiations for it. But that's another story for another day. So you worked for...
I'll play if you let me roll 20s.
Okay. We'll see. I'm not the one running that one, so...
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, we're going to talk about your time with TSR. So,
Okay.
What did you do at TSR exactly?
I was a freelance editor. I saw an ad in Dragon Magazine saying, "Hey, we're looking for freelance editors. So, write to this address." This is back when, if you wanted to do something, you had to write something called a letter and put a stamp on it. So I wrote in. They sent me their editing test, and I did that, and it was not easy. Sent it back, and on the day I got engaged, I came home and walked into the apartment and saw that I had a letter from TSR. I'd been accepted. So I got my first job with TSR, which was this little piece.
The Poor Wizard's Almanac.
Yep, I was one of multiple editors on it. I don't know if you can see that. But it was me and Newton Ewell. So this is a basic D&D product.
And what version would that be? Was that V1?
This is when I did this. D&D was in second edition, AD&D second, but basic D&D was still basic D&D. So that was like Hollow World and stuff. So this was basically, well, for example, I'll give you some of the riveting stuff in here. Armies of the World, Vertalock. Basis, Renaissance, males and females, up to 2% standing, up to 20% wartime. Population, 6,200. Yeah, my screen just went blank. Many troops dead or stranded on outer world.
That's pretty interesting.
But that's what this is. This is a gazetteer. It's an almanac.
And what else did you work on for them as well?
My second one was Murky Deep. by Norman Ritchie. Look, I still have the ads in it. This one was an underwater adventure. Norman's a very imaginative guy. However, he's from the South, and I don't know where in the South, but he wrote like he speaks, and I had to translate that.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so that was a difficult job, but Murky Deep. Followed up by Swamp Light by Gene Rabe. This is amazing. This one is guess what? It's in a swamp. Um, you had to, with this one, you have to, yeah, I was complete editorial control. I had to make sure the map said what they're supposed to say and that sort of thing. Fourth one was, and last one, was this big puppy. Dark Sun, Black Sky Mountain. There are 3 books in here. I did one of them.
That's really
I know.
awesome. So those are the
No.
4 books you did. Did you ever work with Janelle Jacques when you were at TSR or?
Yeah, in fact, she is listed in one of these. In any case, when I went to Games Workshop, they had a no. Oh, there we go. Janelle did this
Oh,
cover.
okay. So if
Says so right
anyone,
there.
so just to bring in that arc with that is my 3rd episode of my podcast I ever did. I had her, Janelle, on this show talking about her times and her achievements. So there's a nice little tie-in. It's a small world we live in.
It's small world. Sorry. But when I started Games Workshop, they had a no competition clause, so I had to leave TSR. When I worked at TSR at the same time, I worked at Chessex Game Distributors, so I was able to do both.
And what did you do? And understand that, because we already talked about this as well, that when she worked at Chessex, it's not the Chessex that we know. It was that just sells dice. They sold all different kinds of games, correct? And you
Well,
want to explain that?
sure. There's Chessex Manufacturing, which did dice. It did those vinyl mats. It did figure cases, all kinds of like widgets. But mostly, the biggest thing they did was chess boards, like really expensive ones, chess clocks, really expensive chess pieces. The owner of the place was a chess fanatic, hence Chessex. But he also got into game distribution. And when I worked there, there was Chessex Manufacturing that was based in Berkeley, California, and then there were 2 Chessex distributions: Chessex East, where I worked in Phoenixville, and then Chessex Midwest was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's where the owner was based. I won't say his name. But in any case, it was the largest game distributor in the country at the time, followed only by Armory down in Baltimore, Maryland. And we were full line. And what I did, I started out just pulling orders. Does that sound familiar? And we sold a lot of Games Workshop back then, especially their board games like Talisman. A lot of TSR. So as you can imagine, I was pretty thrilled when my books came in. I was like, eventually, when Magic came out and everybody was speculating, and things became not as fun. At that point, I was working the phones. I was the head of sales, and it got to be the people would get on the phone, retailers, and they just start screaming at me because we didn't have Magic cards. No one had Magic cards because this is back when they were rare. It came to a head, and myself and the owner of the company just didn't get along. So I quit. And on the day I was quitting, I was done at noon. At about 5 minutes to 12, I got a phone call from Mark Hall at Games Workshop. He said, "Is it true you're leaving Chessex?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why don't you come down here work for us?" I was like, "Okay." And that's how my career at Games Workshop started. I took a week off between the things, and in October of 1994, I went to work in Baltimore at Games Workshop. So
That's
what
awesome.
what I didn't know, I was a retail liaison, and there I was supposed to call customers and make sure they're happy with their Games Workshop product. That was it. That was my job. Is everything going? Do you need any replacement parts? Do you need What I didn't know is that about A year later, in September of 1995, Games Workshop went direct. They dropped all distributors. Most of my friends who are still at Chessex still won't talk to me because I was part of the Games Workshop group. We dropped distributors. But there's about 10 salespeople, and we went from there. I sent you some pictures of some of the people
Yes,
I worked with.
and those pictures will be, I will have those up at the end of the video.
So from there, I worked in that area for several years. And then I got promoted to mail order supervisor, and I ran the trolls in the US. Never missed a target. And God, I've got some stories there. Eventually was promoted back to trade sales manager, and there I started training people as well. And I worked on the training manuals. So from there, I went to the retail administration. The trade sales administration to run that team for a while, then to retail administration. And that is when my position was eliminated. And that was September 1st of 2003. And I came home to Pennsylvania.
That's a rough thing. So you said you had some stories about when you worked in the mail order. What are some of the stories that you would want to tell?
I got stories from trade sales too. One of my favorite mail order stories was September of I don't remember what year it was, 1996 or 7 or something like that. They set us the highest target that they'd ever set. And if we hit that target, we were all going to get these metal 3-up Space Marines. Now, if a plastic model is going to be about that, do I have a plastic model? I forget the one. They're about that big. But when you make the molds, you carve them this big out of resin. And then from there, the people who make the molds are made out of metal. They're literally carved into the metal. They use a 3-up and some kind of stenciling design to make it that big. Well, what they did is they took the 3-up of the new Space Marine, because it was the new edition of 40K coming, and they made metal Space Marines. If we could hit that target, we would all get Space Marines, and no one got these Space Marines. I mean, you couldn't buy them. But my people got it. We got it 2 weeks in. So they set a second target, which was twice as high. And if we could hit that target, they would take the entire department to Ruth Chris Steakhouse in Baltimore. Yeah. And there are 10 of us. We hit it. Plenty to spare. Biggest targeted mail order U.S. had ever hit. So we went, like 2 months later, we went, and these 3 guys who I worked with decided they're going to have an eating contest. Now, these are all 3 guys who were hefty gamers. I won't give names. We'll just call them A, B, and C. A was my boss. B and C were people who worked for me. They all got one of those 22-ounce porterhouse steaks, the big ones, and they were going to race to see who could finish it first. Not at all. First.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So B made it around the curve, around the T-bone. C did eventually finish his, but A finished his and ordered a second one. Finished it before C finished. That's like a $70 steak. And yeah, of course, the wine was flowing. We had people driving for us. So, yeah, it was fun.
It sounds it. Also, I'm sure that working for a company like Games Workshop, you have probably had tournaments, things to that aspect as well.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was some of the tournaments like, playing in an in-house Games Workshop tournament, playing like Warhammer or any of their other games?
Well, I only ever won one tournament. I was the Blood Bowl champion. But we had a guy named Bettigue, who was running for a while. He ran Games Workshop Canada. He came down to run our retail network. Now, Ed was just monster creative. And what he would do is he would create like a board. Boards are 8x4. You've probably seen him if you went to Games Day. You'd make a board, and he would set up this huge scenario to play. So we'd have a combine, like a massive battle. We divide, people in half. Like, you're on the side of evil, you're on the side of good. One of them was an undead one, and I played undead. So that was Black Keep. He built a 4-foot high mansion. We had all these little details. Like in one of the windows, you could see 2 skeletons playing cards and stuff like that.
And these were full on models, right?
Oh yeah, he built them completely out. And then the whole idea was the vampire counts. This is when the vampire counts came out. We're trying to take over the planet, and everyone had to try to stop them. So that was a full day of gaming. We'd have staff tournaments in which he would write scenarios, 4 different scenarios, either in fantasy or 40K, whatever's going on. And usually it was, your standard win the board quarters thing, but sometimes it was a little different. I still have some of those scenarios. I really should post them or something, but some of them were really goofy. My favorite was we were playing a fantasy one. I had Tomb Kings. Second scenario was trade parties with your opponent, see how you like it. Because a lot of people played cheesy armies. So that was fun because I knew the weaknesses of my army. So, but we would have staff tournaments with huge prizes, like big Slayer swords. I mean, 6-foot long actual swords. And of course, these would be played in the warehouse area. And we'd be on tap. There'd be kegs. I would bring a bottle of Jack Daniels, and to have some Cokes. We had a lot of fun with it. It was an all-day. It was a 2-day thing. You play the first day, you play the second day. Champions got a lot of prizes. Your painting was graded. Painting was a matter of pride. Good painters were respected. People who didn't give a damn were ridiculed badly. So my painting went from being okay to pretty good. I'm no Trent Nyman, but I got by. And I sent pictures of those. So
yeah, as well as you, and a couple of your models had been published, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. White Dwarf magazine, Warhammer Skirmish book, and Troll magazine, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And what were these models that were published?
The first one was a Tyrannid. When the new Tyrannid models came out, everyone painted a Tyrannid. And it was mandatory fun. Everyone painted a Tyrannid. You were given a weekend. Here's your Tyrannid model. Monday, bring it in. So, but everyone painted. So, you would hang out with your friends and you'd paint because we came from all over the world. So we had no family in the area. We hung out with each other. So I went over to my friend Mark Gregory's and we hung out and listened to some music, talked some trash, and painted Tyranids. That's what we did. And I won. Mine was most cockroach-like, which is exactly what I was going for. Well, they're bugs, aren't they? So the second one was the Space Marine Captain, Dark Angel Captain that I did. And that was a Games Day figure. And then I did this thing on my own. Warhammer Skirmish was coming out, and the idea of that was you had little 500-point or 250-point armies, and you'd make a specialty board 2x2, and you'd go from there. I built an Egyptian tomb. I used source material from actual Egyptian tombs, and on my lunch breaks and that sort of thing, I'd go back into the area where we built tables and everything, and I'd work on it. It took me about 3 weeks. I was really proud of that thing. And again, I sent you pictures of that. That one I donated to an auction a couple of years ago. A friend of mine has cancer and needed money, so I donated that table to a silent auction. I don't know if it's sold, but that's where it is now. Someone's got it. So it was used at several games days too, because everyone's like, ooh. So that made all the magazines and yada yada yada.
So what was I would ask now, working at a place like Games Workshop or TSR, is it like what most of us gamers would actually portray it to be, like just fun the entire time, or is it just, or is it like a lot of stress and just not worth it a lot of times, or what?
Well, TSR wasn't any stress because I was a freelancer, and everybody I met was just amazing. They were fantastic people. So I'll say TSR wasn't very stressful. as long as you hit your deadlines. I understand if you missed a deadline, they weren't very nice. You know, these big beefy guys from Lake Geneva will come down. I hear you missed a deadline.
Just like
But
when you go to HR.
yep. So, but Games Workshop was not all fun and games. If you were on the sales floor, you had targets to hit, and you damn well better hit them. There were times when we would stay till midnight trying to hit a target, trying to call retailers like on the West Coast at midnight and say, you know, hey, we need to get an order in, that sort of thing. And it was hard, and there was a lot of pressure. It was a militarized structure. You know, everybody thought of each other as like Terminators and that sort of thing, especially trade sales. And there were things that happened that at any other company, A, I would have quit. B, I probably would have killed somebody. But definitely they were major HR issues. I mean, major. But it was an English company. They ran an English style. Story went around about how when a bunch of our guys were over in the UK training, the CEO came into the sales area and pinned a pink slip on the bulletin board. And if you had low numbers that day, the lowest numbers, didn't matter who you were fired. So that was all hands on deck. Everyone doing their best to not to have that low number. And one person did have those low numbers, and that person was fired. And in the UK, you could do that. So, and in Maryland, you could do that. Oh, sorry, I'm adjusting here. In Maryland, you could do that because it's an at-will state.
Just like Pennsylvania and many other states in the country. They
Yeah.
don't even need a reason to fire you. So,
Nope, they just. Now, in our case, I did, as a supervisor or manager, I did have to let some people go, and I hated doing it. And I made sure that I had a case. I built it up. I gave people every chance in the world, I thought. And that sucked. But as a manager, you're in charge of your own little area. And some of, like, for example, I was in charge of the West Coast for a couple of years. That was my own little country, and it was bigger than some of the European games workshops. So I had targets to hit, and if I didn't hit them, I personally was responsible. And as we all know, shit rolls downhill. I'll just say other managers let it roll downhill. I didn't. That's not the way I did things, because that target was my responsibility. If I couldn't motivate my people to get that target, that was my fault.
and that's the way a manager should be, reality.
Well, I remember when Glenn Ross came out. Have you ever seen that movie, or at least the famous scene with Alec Baldwin? Yeah, they saw that as something to aspire to, certain managers. So yeah, Games Workshop was a high stress job. We worked hard. We worked very hard. There were times when trade salesmen had to go out into the warehouse and pull orders because we were backed up or that sort of thing. Everyone did everything. There was no, oh, well, I'm a manager, I don't do that. No, you get your hands dirty. I liked that part. But you also played hard, and the company was very good to us, that sort of thing. In my blog, I wrote about a time when we went to the Baltimore Brewing Company, its trade sales team, and we got thrown out because a couple of people got into a drinking contest, and one of them staggered back and destroyed a jazz trio. Okay. I mean, literally destroyed the entire jazz trio. We got thrown out. 3 or 4 years later, after Games Day, which is our big convention, there's about 100 of us, and we went to the Baltimore Brewing Company, and we're all there in these yellow T-shirts. This was standard one's red, but one year we wore yellow. And the manager then was named Richard. He was a Brit, and he had this big cut scar on his forehead from a bar fight in the UK. And the manager said, "You can't come in here." And the manager said, "Look, we are going to spend obscene amounts of money. We're going to eat and we're going to drink. If you don't want this obscene amount of money, we will go elsewhere." They put the tables together for us, and there was eating, there was drinking, and there was a food fight. It consumed the entire place.
That's awesome.
And it started when my dear wife, who was sitting to my right, across from me was my boss at the time, a mail order boss, and he had this spoonful of whipped cream, and he was like targeting it, and I didn't think he was going to do it. My wife's like, "No, to your left, fire!" Right in the middle of my face. I, of course, retaliated with the whatever I was drinking, and it spread like a wave down the sides of the table and then through the room. And I still have not let my wife forget that she was the spotter, the artillery spotter. So, but we played other games too. I had a very good D&D group that ran for 6 years down there. We played second edition, and we played a lot of historical miniature war games too. So, I said we played hard, and we were close. I said we were a family. Most of the people when I transitioned were pretty cool about it. Some weren't. The people I expected not to be weren't. The Trumpies and that sort of thing. So most of the people who worked there were Republicans. This was in the era of W. So, but what are you gonna do?
That's true. So, I guarantee you probably played every game that Games Workshop put out during that time period, correct?
Yes, I had to.
What was your favorite game they ever put out?
While I was there,
Yes.
Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl by far.
And what was your all-time favorite, like any Games Workshop game ever created?
Talisman. You can play Talisman online now. I think Fantasy Flight has the license now, but you play it online. But Fury of Dracula was an amazing game, which is, I think Fantasy Flight has that one too. Epic scale stuff, not when it was Epic Space Marine, but back when it was just Space Marine. You had these Titans and everything. I loved that. Oh my God, I love that. These tiny little models, and you had Titans, these big walking machines, and yeah, I'm not a big anime person, but yeah, the idea of a Titan, I loved it.
I mean, Warhammer, I know, is still their biggest game. I mean, I know they've got
40K is their biggest game.
40K, yeah. I mean, they still have, they have video games. They have all kinds of stuff for this stuff now. And the thing is, like, I've been into the Games Workshop retail stores when that was actually a thing. I guess when they were still trying to keep a chokehold on the retail market as well, because I know I can buy Games Workshop pretty much any comic book store, because the one I used to go to when I lived in Delaware had Warhammer stuff in there and had.
Which was that?
The store that was Born a Game in Felton. Little prop for you guys, or Dover.
Yeah.
Because I actually bought a set of Warhammer dice from there, because they were six-sided dice, and I got 20 of them for like $9 or something.
Well, with Warhammer, it's funny. In the rest of the world, Warhammer Fantasy is number one. It's the king. But here in America, it's 40K by far. And they were trying to figure out the why of that. Was it because we Americans are obsessed with guns? Was it because we were lazy and didn't want to paint an entire army? See, in the UK, miniature wargaming is still huge. They have tons of places that have tournaments, that sort of thing. Historicals, non-historicals. And people play for fun. Here in America, we play to win. So we would have international staff tournaments, like over in the UK or something. The people from the rest of the world couldn't figure out why we were such tools. They're like, you guys are no fun to play with. We're just having a lark, playing a game, and you guys are like, with these cheesy armies, trying to kill us. They just never understood that, and I was a little embarrassed by it. So
I guess that's the competitive nature of America for you. And it's funny, like, that's actually a nice point, a really good point. The difference between being competitive in pretty much any other country as opposed to being in America in any kind of games. I mean, you see it on online games, because with the advent of the internet and everything else, it allowed us a lot easier to be able to connect to other players for like PvP battles, even PvE, stuff like that. And you even see it online. Like, I was playing, like, one of the last like major online games I was playing was Destiny, and I actually had a friend from England I met through Destiny I was playing with, and it was just funny, his mentality trying to get this mission done versus mine. and it was just a complete different thing. And
Mhm.
it's actually a really good point, really funny point that you just brought up about that. So,
Like I don't do much online games. In fact, I don't. I'm in Second Life, but I got this because I Linda, my roommate, my bestie, we play Star Trek, not Star Trek Attack Wing because we're both Trekkies. And if you bought an Enterprise, it came with this. There's a code that I'm covering up that if you go into this Star Trek Online thing, you'll get an Enterprise E. Ooh, that's a $35 value.
funny thing is about Funny you brought up Star Trek Online because I was actually a beta tester for Star Trek Online.
Oh, cool.
So I
Oh.
did play it for a while after startup. So I did play for probably like 6 months after startup, even though, as everyone knows and knows me, is I'm really not a Trekkie. I have no problem with the fandom. There are
Hmm.
some episodes I do really enjoy,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. But yeah, I used to do beta testing. I used to do the volunteer beta testing so I can get the free crap when the game came out, so I could be like, hey, look at me. Like I have the original Connie, the original
Hmm.
Constellation class, in the game. If I ever log back in, I could actually reclaim that ship. So, but yeah, so it's just really funny you brought that up. So we're gonna actually bridge. We just segued perfectly into what are your fandoms exactly? What?
Well, I'm a music fanatic for one, but that's not a fandom. I'm an
Well,
80s fanatic. But when it comes to fandoms, Star Wars. Um, when I met my wife, when we went on our first date, we had one of the things we talked about, aside from music, was Star Wars. And she is as much as fanatic as I am. And I was like, oh my God, match made in heaven. Her wedding gift that I gave her was a limited anniversary, 10th anniversary print, which I had framed. And it's like, this thing's going to survive nuclear war. I mean, it's just so well done. But we would play Star Wars Trivial Pursuit, and basically it would come down to whoever missed the first question because we both knew our stuff. We love Star Wars. Um, and before you ask, the prequel sucked. Um,
thank you.
not counting,
The new ones.
yeah, Rogue One was amazing.
Rogue
It's
One's
just,
amazing. The new sequels aren't. I like the new sequels, but yeah, the
I love them.
prequels just really gave me like I've been on many shows where we've talked about
Hmm.
this has been hit over the head so many times, but episode 1 I enjoyed it. It still needed a lot of work. 2 I can't stand. 3 was okay. Like that's pretty much how I rate them.
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks made me pine for Ewoks. That's how bad that was. But I mean, Darth Maul was cool, but then he gets cut in half.
But you know something. At the same time, you talk about Ewoks. You can't really say anything bad about the murderous Cuddle Bears.
Well, the murderous Cuddle Bears, don't forget they're meat eaters. They're going to cook Han and all that sort of thing. And yeah.
Yes, a lot of people forget that they had him on a spit at one point. And think about the end of the movie when
Hmm.
not the special edition, the original where they had
Hmm.
the Yub Nub song.
Hmm.
All those stormtrooper helmets and armor pieces, but no bodies, and
Yeah.
they were having a
Well,
feast. So just think
and they were
about that
having a
one.
feast. Well, of course, with the Death Star blowing up in their atmosphere, they didn't live long anymore. So, but the third one of the prequels was tolerable. If you just forget Hayden Christensen exists, I mean, he was horrible. I mean,
You have
really
to
bad.
admit
But
though, Ewan McGregor did really well as Obi-Wan. I
oh,
will admit that any day.
he was the best part of the entire thing. I mean, but I'm huge in Star Wars. I'm huge into Star Trek. Star Trek is only a few days older than me, so I'm a huge Star Trek nut. Original series,
I was going to ask, which
Kirk.
series is your favorite? Because then a lot of people will get
Original,
into a battle between the Next Generation, and the TOS, which
yeah.
I like TOS, but I'm also really enjoying the Calvin timeline. I know that's got a lot of flack on people, but I do
I
actually
love
enjoy. You do like
I
the
love the
Calvin
Calvin
timeline?
timeline. I
Thank
love
you.
it. So because I take it for what it is. It's just another timeline of Trek. I thought that the guys doing the new Trek were fantastic. The actors. By the time of the end of that first JJ Trek, those people were Kirk, Spock, et cetera, et cetera. They really did a wonderful job. Um, so yeah, and of course, I'm not going to put any shade on Next Generation. There are some amazing stories in there.
Some bad ones too, though. Let's be
Oh yeah, well, there's
honest.
some bad ones in the original series. Spock's brain.
Yeah, but the
The last
Trouble with Tribbles is my all-time favorite episode on the TOS.
Deep Space Nine did a throwback to it, in which people from that timeline went back to the Tribble thing and were incorporated into it. It's really freaking amazing how they did it. And also that's where you see Worf in the same room as those Klingons that don't have the things. And I won't say what happens, but it's pretty funny. Um, but the original series, I don't know, it just seemed to matter more because they were talking about things that were going on. And it was just fun. Yeah, the special effects were cheesy. So what?
Look when the show came out, though, too. Back then,
Yeah.
they were good special effects. You pull up any movie, look at like Last Starfighter from 1980s.
Oh,
That movie was cutting edge when it came out. Like special
fun.
effects wise, first movie to ever to completely incorporate CGI in the major
That was
scenes.
Tron.
Well, they're actually for like the ship scenes and everything else, they went
Mm-hmm.
further than Tron. Yet now you look at it and it's like it's so basic looking. Like you see bad video
Mm-hmm.
games with better graphics. I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of the way it goes. So you all
right.
need to remember the age of the show too.
But it's the writing and the acting. Yes, Shatner overacted, but not everyone did. And there are some times he was really, really effective. Usually when he was understated. Um, and with the Next Generation, they had some really bad ones, like um, Dr. Crusher falls in love with the ghost inhabiting her grandmother.
I remember this one. That
Uh,
was a disturbing episode, actually.
mm-hmm. But there's some
Borg
great,
series was amazing. Like the whole
yeah.
Locutus of Borg series, like that whole series when they introduced them, that was an amazing little story arc.
Mm-hmm. And then you had Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. So, and that last episode, All Good Things, I'll put that up against any of the Next Generation movies, and I'll put it up against most of the original series movies. So,
Except for
for
Khan,
which,
except
by
for
the
Wrath of Khan, because that's
well,
still
no, Khan is number one. That's just a given. After that, we can start arguing. Like for me, the number two is number six. I really liked The Undiscovered Country because it just had an autumnal feel to it. It spoke to what was going on at the time, which was people forget that when that sucker came out, the Berlin Wall was falling down. That Russia was in turmoil and trying to become a new nation. Well, that's exactly what Star Trek, that Undiscovered Country, reflected. I mean, spot on. I mean, you can look back and say, yeah, this and that, and nitpick it a little bit, but it was a bleeping good movie.
same thing
Um,
with the Voyage Home, which I think was 5,
mhm.
where
Four,
they or 4, yeah, when they travel back in time to get a killer whale to save the world. The
Humpback
blue
Whale.
whale, blue humpback whale,
Yeah,
yeah, which at the time was an endangered species.
still is.
But yeah, I mean, right there spoke like, hey, look, we're killing
Mhm.
these off. You don't know, but that could be the key to saving our world in the future. And we're killing these things off like crazy.
Yep. But I mean, let's face it, there were some clunkers. Star Trek Five. What does God need with a starship? You know.
It had me actually. I was dying. I think it was the only thing I had. I was laughing. I think it was 5 is when they got the new Enterprise finally after.
Hmm.
And the beginning of the movie, they're sitting there in the ships. They're in space. They're in the middle of
Hmm.
their mission, and the whole ship's torn apart because it just doesn't
Yep.
work. And
Hmm.
Scotty's pretty much like probably downing like tons of beer and
Yep.
everything else at the time to try to
That's
keep
one where he
fit.
clunks his head on a beam. I know this slick chip like the back of my hand. Donk. But the next gen movies, well, the last one was bad. It was really bad.
Are you being
Nemesis.
nice?
It was shitty as hell. It was the second worst Star Trek movie. 5 is still the worst. But I mean, the Borg one was amazing. I
That
even
was
liked
Insurrection,
Generations.
right? If I remember
No,
correctly.
Insurrection was the one where they went to a planet where you could stay young forever, which brought up some great, some interesting moral questions. But that was First Contact was the
First
Borg.
Contact, yeah, because they had to go back to Earth to have help the guy invent this jump drive so they can. I remember that part.
Because the Borg went back um, to stop that and also to assimilate Earth. I liked Generations. Um, there were some bad parts of Generations, but it was kind of cool seeing Picard and Kirk work together. Malcolm McDowell was over the top, but it raises a good question. This is a question I bring up occasionally online. Okay, the Nexus gives you whatever you want, your greatest desire. So, what is your Nexus? What is it to you? So, and it's amazing you ask that question to people. I'm like, yeah, you get some good answers. So,
That's true. There we go. Why don't you guys put that down in the comments?
mhm.
There's your question for you guys. So why don't you guys say what
What
you
is
would
your
want?
Nexus?
What is your Nexus exactly? So
Now, my question is, of course, Picard is a Frenchman, and his Nexus is a Victorian Christmas, Victorian English, and then there's a picture behind him of the Picard who fought at Trafalgar for France, but he's still English.
and he has an English
So,
accent.
whatever, right? So,
So what do you
but
think about seeing we're talking about Star Trek? What do you think about Discovery?
I've only seen the one episode because I didn't have the money to pay for all line access. I enjoyed what I saw. I don't know why they had to mess with the Klingons again. That's my only problem with JJ Trek is that they effed with the Klingons. So it's like, seriously? But I enjoyed what I saw. So I'm told it's a half decent series too, but I haven't seen it. So how much fanatic of a Trekkie am I? I own on DVD the animated series from
That's
1973.
pretty well up there.
Filmation. So
So what other fandoms? Anything else or?
Star Trek, Star Wars. I'm a huge comic book geek. I learned to read with comic books. In the Superman v Batman, I'm a Superman girl.
So what do you
Which is
think
weird.
about the new 52? Them pretty much rebooting the whole DC rebooting everything.
Pardon me, I got a bucket over here. Blah!
So I take it you're not a fan of the new 52.
No, I hated the new 52. They've rebooted things like 6 times since then. Because every time they reboot it, it sucks worse.
So let's
Flashpoint, great series, but then Superman wearing armor. He's Superman. He doesn't need armor. I mean,
So are you DC or Marvel?
I used to read more DC than Marvel, but when Spider-Man had another clone thing going on, and then there was that whole I made a deal with the devil, so I'm no longer married. I was like, this blows. So I ditched out of Spider-Man. Daredevil was my other favorite, but he changed costume back to black and then moved back to San Francisco. And I was like, oh, this sucks. And I didn't have the money to keep buying all the books I did, so I just stopped buying. So the only book I'll pick up, and I'll pick that up when it comes in collected editions, is Astro City by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross and Brett Eric Anderson. That has an amazing run. And also with Astro City, they have a wonderful episode with a trans person in it. So issue, which I thought was fantastic. If you don't know Astro City, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's the first graphic novel version. It's like the first 3 or 4 issues is called Life in the Big City. Run, don't walk, go get it. It's that good. So.
That's awesome. Actually, it's actually a couple more comic book questions because comic books is pretty much what most of us did grow on. We didn't have the internet.
Back in my day, we didn't have your fancy internet.
So, as far as like everything goes, like I said, do you think that DC can actually finally maybe? I mean, they did it once. They did it with Wonder Woman. And then they
Hmm.
completely screwed it up with Justice League. And do you think they can actually make more than one good movie in a decade?
Well, I didn't see Justice League. Um, I loved Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman is one of the best superhero movies out there. The Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy was amazing, even with the third one where you couldn't understand a word what people were saying. But um, I enjoyed Batman v Superman because I had read the books it was based on. And let's face it, it's just Dark Knight Returns with a couple of these. Is there some cringe-worthy moments like why did you say her name? But it's pretty cool watching Superman take on terrorists. And that scene with Batman going through the warehouse, that's freaking Batman. And I don't care. Ben Affleck was a horrible Daredevil. He was a great Batman. So again, I haven't seen Justice League. So
What do you think about him stepping down from the director's chair and from the Batman role?
I don't know anything about it. He's a great director. I mean, Argo was a brilliant movie.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
couple months ago, I believe. Yeah, he officially announced that he is stepping away from the Batman series. He's stepping away from first. I think he was just stepping away from directing. Now he just stepped away from acting as well,
oh,
just from
well,
Batman.
he's got things to do, and people have been giving him all kinds of flack for it. I thought he was good. Um, so can DC pull out a good movie? Well, I'd like to bring up Christopher Reeve's Superman. The first two movies were incredible. Um, Again, the Christopher Nolan Batman. The first two Batman series by Tim Burton were really good, but then you got Bat Nipples.
Bat Nipples.
Um,
We've actually had a whole episode on Bat Nipples on one of the other podcasts I used to be on.
so Bat Nipples. I watched Excalibur the other day, 1981, John Borman. Um,
Great
the
movie.
the armor had nipples. Modred and his mother Morgana had nipples on their armor.
I'm gonna have to watch this
Was that?
movie again. It's been a while.
Oh, Nicole Williamson's a tour de force. He's a force of nature as Merlin. But yeah, their armor has nipples. Her armor has nipples. She has this breastplate with these huge nipples, and it's just like, hello.
It's like that's
That's Helen.
distracting.
That's a young Helen Mirren too. She was smoking hot.
Well,
So
like you said, it came out in '83, so
81.
81. I'm sorry, I
I was
apologize.
I
81.
I was so playing D&D back then, and it was just like But
So do you
so
still play
Ken,
D&D?
no, I set up D&D's on what fifth edition now. Um,
Six for advanced. I know a lot of people still play the older versions. Like I'm in a 3.5 D&D, which I'm actually going to go play tonight. And then you also have Pathfinder, which seems to have made a lot more people happy. Is that first? Is that second edition?
this is first edition.
Wow, there's a. Just so you guys don't know, that's a relic right there.
This is the original Dungeon Master's Guide. This was published in 79? 79, 1979.
That book is almost
By
as old as I am.
I have two copies of this. This belonged to my friend Al, who passed away, and so I got it. But primarily, when I worked at TSR, I was second edition. That's what I play because that's the one I know. I started a second edition group last fall, and we had some wonderful sessions. But then working retail, I had to stop because retail Christmas, and we never started back up. I've got all the time in the world now, but the people who are playing have gone on to other things. So, do I miss D&D? Yeah, absolutely. I miss gaming. When I worked at Chessex and Games Workshop, I collected games. Everyone collects something. People collect comic books. They collect books. I collected games, and when I worked at Games Workshop, there's always at least 4, 5, 6 guys you could get together, or guys and women, to play games. Hey, look, I've got this new XYZ board game. Want to play it? Oh, what? Okay, tomorrow night. Okay, cool. And we play. We would do one-offs of role-playing games. I had an amazing night of Call of Cthulhu, in which one person was laughing so hard he shit himself. I'm not
Literally?
kidding.
Like
He
really?
literally shit himself and then ran into the bathroom and then shit all over the bathroom.
Ugh, that's kind of gross, actually. Funny but
I know,
gross.
but he cleaned it up. So after we got over the initial, "Ew," it was really funny. um, it, it was, but since I'm moving home back in 19, nothing, sorry, 2003, I mean, there's a couple people that play games around here, but um, most people are into computer games now. So I'm like, hey, let's get together a game of Talisman, or let's get together a game of Blood or something.
You gotta admit, though, playing online versus playing like the actual tabletop version is a lot different. It's not the same feel.
No, you're playing a tabletop. You're actually interacting face to face with people. And we have a place here in Phoenixville called Gamers Heaven or Gamers Haven. And it's a place where you can just go play games. And I go there occasionally. Um, it's like I'm kind of like a celebrity when I walk in there because having worked for Games Workshop, worked for TSR, and they know that. And I've donated a lot of games there that I know I'll never play. I have a whole storage site full of games. I've been selling a lot of them off because, I'm not going to play them. Someone may as well enjoy them. So, yeah. But about once a year, my old friends from high school get together. We call each other the chums. And we just, in honor of our friend who died, the one who owned that, we have a day of just playing games. We go to a bar, we rent out a room in a bar, and we play games and drink. Most of them were very cool, relatively cool with my transition. A couple of them weren't. So, what are you going to do? Last time we played a long game of the original Illuminati. Steve Jackson Games card. Not the actual card game, but it was a game that's done with cards. With backstabbing abounds. So
Steve Jackson Games still around to this day. There's another. Steve Jackson Games is one of those legendary names you'll hear in gaming, like in tabletop gaming. People don't
and
realize it a lot of times because you think tabletop gaming, you think D&D, you think Warhammer, but yeah, you don't realize Steve Jackson, has his, he's brought some of the most influential tabletop games into existence.
GURPS,
GURPS,
Ogre, uh,
Munch.
Awful Green Things from Outer Space.
I mean, you also have other tabletop games like Munchkin too.
Yeah, Munchkin. And Steve Jackson got his start working for the UK affiliate of TSR. And that's when TSR, the UK distribution company for TSR, was a little company that he helped start with a guy named Brian Ansel called Games Workshop. So, and then Steve went off to start his own thing here in America. Brian Ansel took Games Workshop, and instead of just distributing TSR, he started to make his own miniatures and his own games. And there's Games Workshop. So, okay. Brian Ansel the Mad. Yeah, there's a connection.
There's always connections. That's the funny thing about like the gaming world. People don't realize, especially with the original tabletop gaming world, everything is somehow connected to another.
It's very incestuous. Here's a story for you. Lisa Stevens, who I mentioned earlier, who the whole Pathfinder thing, it's her company. My screen just went black.
You probably just your computer just fell asleep probably.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Lisa Stevens used to work for Wizards of the Coast. Now, back then, Wizards of the Coast had one main property, and that was something like Outer Space Women, bloop, 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 bloop. But in any case, there we go. Got to work yet. She worked there for several months for no pay because they couldn't afford to pay her. So she and like three others took shares of the company in payment. And she also had a day job. Then they came out with this card game. This guy named Richard Garfield came up with a card game called Magic the Gathering. And when it came out, no one really much cared because it was Wizards of the Coast, for God's sakes. And And Bunnies and Burrows, I think, was another one of theirs. But in any case, I went to Gen Con that year. I was with Chessex at the time, and everywhere you looked, it was people. Every space this is what it was in Milwaukee, were people playing Magic. Magic everywhere. Across the street was this restaurant called Major Goolsby's, which makes some great chili. Every table, people playing Magic. I called back to my boss and said, order as much Magic as you can. Buy it all. Trust me. And they did. For a while, Chessex was the only people who had alpha decks of Magic the Gathering. In any case, of course, Wizards of the Coast becomes huge. And eventually they buy TSR. Lisa is the executive vice president of Wizards of the Coast at the time. Eventually, Hasbro buys TSR and Wizards of the Coast. Lisa's portion of that ran to, I believe, 8 figures, her shares. 8 figures. So she was able to start Pathfinder.
And Paizo Publishing as well then, right? Or is Paizo Publishing hers?
Yeah, it's all hers. Hers. Not hers and someone else. Hers. She's one hell of a businesswoman and a very nice person. So, but again, it shows you how things spin through this business. So,
yeah, we're about out of time. So I would like to thank Sophie for coming on today. You're a great host. I mean, great host. They're a great guest. There we go.
I do talk to him occasionally on my award-winning blog, Woman Named Sophie. So Google it.
Say how can people contact you if you'd like to talk to you?
Well, there's a blog, and my email is Sophie, the number 1, Lynn, Lynne @yahoo.com. I'm also on Facebook, under Sophie Lynn, and that's really about it. When it comes to friending on Facebook, send me a message first, because if I don't know you and there's a friend request, I'm going to assume you're like a retired widowed general from the Middle East or something.
Yeah, no, seriously, that's like the problem with Facebook right there, because I'll get at least 2 to 5 a day, so I know you're paying, and it's like no mutual friends, and it's like it's always a general or an admiral or
they'll say they're a colonel, but it's a naval uniform.
And they can barely speak English, and the profile's made like a week ago.
Yeah, it's like, oh please. So
yeah, it's one of the struggles of Facebook. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. If anybody wants to ask questions, you can either put them in the comments, hint hint. You can contact me, or you can contact Christina and she'll forward them to me, or you could just keep them to yourself and no one will ever answer them.
All right, so we're going to end this interview now. I'm going to put these photos up for you guys to look at. And until next week, you'll stay safe, and you all have a good one.
Thank you again. Bye.
guys, I hope you enjoyed the pictures that Sophie had shared with me of her time at the Game Workshop right there, some of the models she did, etc., and some of her events she went to and things like that. Just remember to please subscribe, like, comment, and until next week, have a good one.
がりしてる最中誰にも心さらせたくなくてほっぺつり上げて笑顔取り繕うために何をしようかのプランで愛を歌う並べただけの単語に意味なんかないのさそれでいいのさこの気持ちに気づいてしまう前にケンケンパンひょうひょうと言って曲げそうな時はごまかしてそれ